Welcome to the World Physiotherapy Congress 2021 online presenter training support program. Great you're all here. This session today is designed to support presenters in our live sessions and focusing on those involved in discussion sessions and in the inspiration sessions. My name is Birgit, and I work with the Congress Program Committee in putting together the content. And today I'm joined by Helen von Dadelsen from Present Potential, who also worked with us in 2019 to prepare speakers for our Congress in Geneva. This time around, we felt with an online event, things are slightly different. So we were expanding this program and are providing you with tips and guidance on how best to meet the needs of speakers and presenters. So just a few comments about the session, how the session will run. So your microphones and cameras are off. We ask you to come forward with any queries at any time during the session. We're planning to have about an hour, but we can be around for a bit longer if needed. So you can access the question, can put in the questions in the Q&A box. You can find this at the bottom of your screen. And there's also a chat function where you can perhaps introduce yourself so that we know who's joining, from where you are joining. Also, what is important, we are recording this session so that others who are unable to join at this time of the day can watch it later. Also on the chat function, please enable this option that all panelists and participants can see what you're saying, because otherwise all your comments in the chats will only go to the panelists, and it would be great to share it with all of us. So if you have any problems during the webinar, you can also email us. So my colleague Rach is keeping an eye on the info@World Physiotherapy, info@World Physio inbox. So in case there are any problems, please contact us. So today's session is about your contribution at discussion sessions and inspiration sessions. And here's an overview on what we're planning to do during the coming hour. I will introduce the two session formats a bit more, and then give you a glimpse on how the online platform will look like. Then we'll have a look at any queries that are coming in. And then I will hand over to Helen, who will provide you with tips and hints on how to prepare and deliver your live session. Then we've got more times for questions, and then at the end there's some key dates you should be aware of. So we would like to start with a quick poll to get an idea on how confident you feel about presenting at Congress. And Rachel thinks he's sharing the poll, so please give your vote so that we get an idea on where we are at the moment at the start of this session. So we give it a bit more time so that more people can share their perception on where they are at the moment, on feeling confident, more or less confident. Just give it a few more seconds. And then I think we can share the results so that you can see where we are, where you are as participants in this webinar at the moment. So we've got a good share of people who feel confident and okay. some feel terrified, worried about this. So let's hope that we can boost this from okay, confident to perhaps very confident. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on the confidence level. I think we can close this now. So on the discussion session, so these will be 1-hour sessions where there's a chair, a moderator, and panel members, 3 to 4 panel members. They will be on screen, and different to what you see here, because this is a picture taken from 2019 Congress. People will not be on a stage, but they will be on individual tiles on participant screen. There will be no PowerPoint. And we hope these sessions to be really interactive. So there's a lot of controversial discussion between the participants on the panel, but also with the audience sitting in front of their screen. So there's, similar to the session that you have now, there will be a comments box for the general chit chat, so where people can say where they're from, put in any comments, and then there's the more kind of formal Q&A box where people can put in their questions, and these questions will be picked up by the moderator. The moderator is the one reviewing questions, summarizing them, and putting them to the speakers. And we talk about the moderator as being the voice of the audience. So this person is really the link between the panel on the screen and the audience sitting in front of their computers. Also, a bit like as we did earlier, there's poll functions available. This is another tool that you can use to engage with your audience, to get a better idea on people's opinions, sitting out there, people's experience, etc. The inspiration sessions are slightly different. They are much shorter. They are only 25 minutes. There's also no PowerPoint. There's only one chair, or we call them chair for consistency, but this is a person who will be interviewing and engaging either 1 or 2 speakers on screen. So it's a fairly small, informal setting. And the approach is to use storytelling, really. It is about exploring a topic more in depth in a conversation between the chair and either 1 speaker or 2. So it's a smaller, more, you could say, a more intimate setting. For these sessions, there's no moderator, and there's also no Q&A as such, because we don't think that this is these are topics where they generate a lot of questions. It's more about listening in, sitting there with your cup of coffee and listening to the story that the persons have to tell. But the comments box will still be available. So these are really just a short overview on the 2 session formats that we have without PowerPoint. So when you log on to the Congress page, once it's live, this is what you will see. So there will be all these different tiles for you to watch the program, to look up speakers. And today's session, the discussion session and the sessions that are broadcast live will be under the live button, as you can see on screen. And once these sessions are delivered, they will move into the on-demand section. So people will be able to watch discussion sessions and inspiration sessions at a later time. All sessions will be available for 3 months for all the registered participants, and they can watch it at any time. So that's really convenient, considering that at Congress there will be 6 channels in parallel, so we call them channels, so 6 sessions that will be taking place at the same time. So there's a bit of competition going on here, but people can, as I said, watch this later on through the on-demand section. So this is, again, just to give you an idea on how this will look on the Congress platform. And as you can see here in red, this is test data, and this is, you will all have received your session times yesterday. And this is just a slide that we put together for training purposes. So it's not, don't worry if this doesn't represent what the timing that you were given. So this is then where you can see how the live sessions that are on at the moment. Then going to specifically the discussion sessions and the inspiration sessions. Again, we do not yet have an example for this. This is why we have this, again, another mock-up here. So this is what it will look like, a bit like in Zoom meetings. So you will have the speakers, the chair, the moderator on screen. And next to it, there will be the comments and the question and answer boxes where people can put in their questions. And what is also an important element at the bottom, below the speakers, there will be buttons, for example, on evaluation. So it's important that we get feedback from those participating so that they can rate individual sessions. The production team, they will focus on speakers on camera depending on who's speaking at the moment. So let's say there's one speaker giving a statement for a minute or two, and then they will focus on their head and shoulders. When there is a lot of back and forth discussion, all of the speakers will be on screen. So the production team are really, I think they've got a lot of experience in doing this, in switching between individual shots and the whole group, displaying the whole group. So this is the first set of my presentation. And before handing over to Helen, I just want to check whether there are any queries from you on what I just introduced. If there aren't any queries at this stage, we can always go back. Let's have a look at the chat if there's anything in there. Because this is also something that we noted, although the chat and the comments function is more for informal information, sometimes queries end up in the chat box. So this is where the moderator will be keeping an eye on the comments box and on the formal Q&A. But it seems there are no queries at the moment. So I'll stop here and hand over to Helen. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Birgit. So now you know, hopefully, what is expected of you in about a month's time. And so I am here to help you unlock your potential and present in the best way you can. I am a speaker, coach, and trainer, and I also have quite a long history working in international healthcare events. So I really know the event type that you've been invited to speak in. So let's get started. What are we going to cover today? Well, I want to give you the tools to ensure that your intervention and overall session at the Congress is interesting and engaging and well prepared. And the aim is to help you prepare and deliver your best presentation. So to do that, we're going to cover audience, who you're speaking to, messaging, how to be concise and focused on what you are there to talk about, your virtual setup. So this is different from being on the stage. We need to think about other elements of setting ourselves up. And finally, some tips on how to present live. As Birgit was saying, you're not expected to have a PowerPoint or any sort of recorded material. It's all going to be live, and that requires some thought as well. I will be inviting you to chat in the chat function. So feel free to share your thoughts and ideas as we go forward. And I'll be stopping periodically as well to take any questions you have. I do have some questions for you and some activities for you to do. So when you registered for this webinar, you answered a question. It was, what are you most worried about when presenting on camera or virtually. And I have the results. The item that came up most frequently, 54%, was you're worried about keeping the presentation interesting and engaging. And I'm so glad that you were worried about that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And if you're already thinking about it, you are more likely to then come to the presentation well prepared with interesting and engaging material. And because it's an online space, this is something that I hear quite often is a real concern, because as we'll talk about a little bit later, people watching you have other distractions and things they can take care of. So we really need to grab their attention. The other thing that 46% of you were worried about was the lack of feedback or atmosphere and energy from the audience. And this is, again, another one that I hear all the time. And it's not surprising. You're sitting in your office or in your house somewhere staring into a black hole, essentially. And it's really hard to then keep up your energy because you don't have any feedback from who you're talking to, both from other people sharing the stage with you, as well as the audience. So I've got a few tips on how to keep up your own energy and keep focused to make sure that you don't lose that feedback. And the other thing that came up quite regularly with your feedback was worrying about how to ensure that your arguments and perspectives are concise and on time. And that's great for the organizers, because it means that you are conscious that you don't have 3 or 4 hours just for a monologue, that you do need to be quite concise in your messaging so that the session is dynamic and that you're able to get your messaging across in a short period of time. And whether you're a discussion panelist or an inspiration panelist, you have quite limited time within there, and you're sharing the stage with other people. Even for the inspiration, it's 25 minutes, interview type session, but it goes quicker than you think. So I'm going to give you some feedbacks on how to be clear on your message, how to develop some sound bites, and how to prepare as a group and individually so that you are concise and on time. So the first thing we need to do is think about who we're speaking to. Tell me in the chat, have you ever been to a World Physiotherapy Congress before? A yes or no? I imagine most of you are, it's not your first time. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes. Okay, we've got more yeses than no's. Yes times 4. Oh, Esther Marie, sounds like you love these events. That's great to hear. Yes, Tom, you loved it. Good. Great. So most of you have been there, so you know what it's like on site. You know what sort of people these events attract, but it's worth revisiting. We are going online, so it could be a little bit different. What's going to happen? Who's going to be there to watch your session? What's happening at the same time? It's difficult to predict, but the aim is to have around 3,000 participants. And I know that we have, at least a couple of weeks ago, we had 1,600. So we're more than halfway there, with plenty of time still for the registrants. But no matter the number, and we shouldn't think about how many people are watching us, we should be giving value, even if we're speaking just to one person. In any case, the audience will be diverse. You have student physios right up to retired physios. You'll have people from different specialities within the physio world, different levels of experience, and you need to think about, what do they already know about the topic that you are talking about? Remember, even though you live and breathe your topic, not everyone is an expert in your field. And this may mean that you need to explain a little bit more context or technical information. And of course, beware of the acronyms and jargon that is very common to you, but may not be familiar for the rest of the audience. The other thing to remember is that people from all over the world will be tuning in. Now, the sessions will be run in English only, but there is a cool interpretation application that World Physiotherapy are trying out to interpret into other languages. So what you need to think about there is to slow down, to enunciate clearly, and give people time to adjust to your accent. Now, speaking of accents, fun question, where do I come from originally? Write it in the chat. Where do you think my accent is from? It's a bit of a strange one. I've been away from my home country for many years now. Kiwi, straight away, Kiwi. I am a Kiwi from New Zealand. Thanks, Lisa and Suzanne. Hannah, no, I'm close to Australia. That's a very common mistake. Swahili, Tanzania. I wish I was from somewhere so exotic. Thanks, Remla. No, I'm from New Zealand. And so when I speak on the international stage, I know that the person, for example, before me, you were listening to Birgit. Now she's from Germany and she's got quite a different accent from mine. So when I start, I know that it takes people a little bit of time to tune their ear into my accent. And sometimes it can be tricky. So I have to be conscious myself constantly to be clear, to repeat myself, to slow down. And you need to do the same thing, especially as it's live sessions that you're presenting in. Slow down, articulate well, speak as clearly as you can, and again, avoid that jargon. The other thing about who you're speaking to is it could be any time of day or night, and people could be listening to you on any type of device. So they might be, I don't know, on the tube listening to you on their smartphone, or they could be in front of their computer in front of a big screen. So all of this you should keep in mind as you're preparing for your session, to be aware of these challenges that people may be facing as they're listening to you. Now, once we know who we're speaking to, we can think about what we want to say. Now, when you prepare your key message, you need to think about what you want that audience to think, feel, or do. And of course, most of you are experts in your field. I imagine you have a lot of information you could share, but you're invited to speak about a specific topic or from a specific angle. So you need to focus on that and not give everything. If you do a good job in presenting, chances are people will reach out to you, and then you can do a deeper dive into different elements. But getting focused on your message. To do this, you also need to think about who else is speaking in your session. What's the overall objective of the session, and how do you contribute to that? So some of you have probably already had or about to have a planning meeting. This is a crucial time where you will virtually sit down with the other panelists and the chair of your session. And this is where you can discuss the content, the approaches, how you fit yourself into the bigger session. Think of it from the audience's point of view. They will see one screen with multiple talking heads inside it. So when you contribute, they want to see that as part of a whole. So the more cohesive you are together, the better the experience for the audience and the stronger the message for them. So what do you want them to do? We always need a transformation. As I said, what do you want them to think, feel, or do? You might want to have someone come to you asking for a collaboration or to ask a question. You could have people in the audience who you could change the way they do something. Or maybe you are giving a problem or a challenge that they haven't thought about or that they share. You could have a potential collaborator in the audience or a funder even. Maybe your approach is unique and you want to inspire the audience to try and test your approach in different settings. Perhaps you're being controversial, which is not a bad thing. If you have it the opposite angle to someone else in your session, that can really make an interesting session and a great debate for the audiences. The point of you presenting in person is to give that human element. And so we want to see you, want to hear you bring the research or approach project to life. This is what we call a call to action or key message. So I have my first exercise for you. here are some quick fire questions to start you thinking, to get focused on your key message. Why should the audience listen to you instead of someone else? As Birgit said, many of you will be speaking in parallel sessions, so people have a choice on which session they want to listen into. Why should they listen to you? That's the first question. Another question that might help. What do you want them to remember about your research, your approach, your area of work? What do you want them to remember? Write it down. I'm going to copy this into the chat. Write it down already now, just to start that process of focusing on your key message. Maybe it's really clear to you already, or maybe this exercise will help you explore a little bit further. Why should people listen to you, and what do you want them to take away? So you don't need to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. You don't have the opportunity to do that, but you should prepare talking points. So this is not a script, word for word, exactly what you want to say, although you might have some messages you do want to write down carefully, but some talking points. What are those key messages you want to get across? If you find yourself filling a page or more of notes, you're probably going too far, and you probably won't have the time to cover that within your interaction in the session. Take the time to write down these talking points, craft them carefully, revisit them regularly, and work with them. Ideally, what you're looking for is a short sentence. So think about at the back of a car and you have a bumper sticker, something snappy that you will read as you're driving past, and maybe it makes you laugh or makes you think differently. Okay, this is what we're looking for, something simple, catchy, and really focused. You could also think of it like a billboard. So you're on the highway and you drive past and there's a couple of words written like that. What you're doing here is creating sound bites. And these are great things that are going to make you memorable, and your message will stick with the audience. Okay? It's a quote that people can take away and repeat and think about and debate. There are a couple of different ways that you can get a snappy, catchy sound bite. One is to use repetition. Another one is to use rhyme. Another one is to use antithesis. So let me give you a couple of examples of some of those, because I think they're good ones, just to start getting your ideas flowing, so that you're not writing full sentences, but you're really making a marketing message, in fact, is what you're looking for. So for example, a rhyme: make it better, hold it together. Okay, that's a little bit maybe flippant, that one, but something like that. Move it or lose it. Okay, something that people will remember. So you can say that multiple times throughout your interventions, and then people are going to me, but oh, that, you know, Anna, that was the woman who told us to move it or lose it, for example. So rhyme. Repetition. So a couple of nice ones. There's one from Steve Jobs: stay hungry, stay foolish, from Steve Jobs. Or there's a scientist, Matt Walker, who said, the shorter you sleep, the shorter your life. Okay, so the shorter, and that repetition sticks with people. It's easier to remember. You could use antithesis. So for example, I don't know, he may be small, but his ideas are big. So we're contrasting opposites, small and big. He may be small, but his ideas are big. Or for example, Dr. Seuss, I love this one. Sometimes the questions are complicated and the answers are simple. So the antithesis there is the opposites. Questions are simple, questions are complicated, answers are simple. So hopefully that's given you a couple of ideas to already start putting together your messaging. As I say, take the time to work out some talking points, the messages that you want, how you want people to think, feel, or what you want them to do after your intervention. Why should they listen to you? What's special or different? What do you want them to remember about your research, your area, etc.? And then if you can get them into short, catchy sound bites, great. Maybe you only need one, you probably only need one of those short sound bites, but if you craft a good one, it's going to stick with people, and it's going to really make that message very, very strong, and they will remember it. People remember that. Does anyone have questions before I move on to the next section about the audience, about being focused on the message, how to create a soundbite? See if we've got any questions coming up. Now, I don't expect you to be able to craft these immediately like that. It's not something that automatically comes to your thoughts. You might think about it as you go to sleep tonight, or maybe in the shower, or maybe you're walking the dog tomorrow, and suddenly you'll start working this. And that's great because you have time to do that. So just start thinking about these catchy phrases. Just one per session, per speaker would be really great. Any questions? Doesn't look like it. If you think of something later, we can address it nearer the end of the session, no problem. So the other thing we've talked about is how tricky it is to be speaking in this virtual space. It is different from going to a conference, right? People have other things vying for their attention. The emails, their own research, phone call, there's a doorbell ringing. So you do need to keep it lively, engaging, and that requires energy and passion. And it's more so, I believe, in the virtual space than in an in-person conference, where we're all sitting in the same room. We've put our out of office message on our emails. People know that we're away for a work trip. So here on the online space, it's probably not the case for most people. And so we really need to step it up. And the best sessions are those that make the audience feel involved. Okay, so this is why it's great to see a session live, because you can contribute to it. If you can have some interactive elements and keep the audience with you, that is going to be so much more powerful than if you just talk between yourselves. So together as a panel in your planning sessions, you can come up with a poll or an activity for the audience. So you may want to get their opinion on something. Maybe it's as simple as, do they agree or disagree with blah, blah, blah. Or, for example, you can give them 4 options. Which out of the 4 options do they usually use when approaching this type of issue? Or, for example, given a particular patient case, how would they approach it? And then you're getting feedback from the audience, and that is great food for populating your session, in fact. And so when you prepare these, you can already think about, brainstorm together all of the possible answers that you're likely to get. And then you can be ready to answer them. So, for example, I knew before the session that when I asked that registration question, I know what the issues are that usually people are worried about. And this is I think this is our 5th or 6th session with different speakers from the same World Physiotherapy Congress. And the top 2 that always come up are always the same. So I know that within my presentation, I need to address those because that's what you're looking for. So you can do the same with your panel. So think about the question or the approach you want to take. And if you know that the audience is going to be split, for example, agree and disagree, because it's an age-old debate, then maybe one speaker can take the agree side and explore that, and the other person can take the disagree side and explore that. Or, for example, if you're giving 4 different options, you can, and you know that probably this 1 and 2 maybe will be most popular, then you can be ready to actually introduce option 3 and 4 and why that should be explored further. Okay, so this way of engaging the audience also helps connect them, but also gives you some material to work with and some sort of structure. The other things you could do is maybe you want the audience to commit to doing something after your session. to do something different. So as a group, again, think about the questions or the challenges you want to give your audience. What do you want them to walk away with? So we talked about that as an individual, but also as a group. Think about that. One thing to make sure that the session is a good virtual session is to keep interventions quite brief. Okay, so you're moving within the panelists quite regularly. So you could agree, and you should agree, on some ground rules for your session, and the chair will definitely help you to drive that. So for example, maybe you say, if you've got 4 or 5 speakers, for example, in a session, which is a lot, maybe you all commit to each intervention. Every time they ask a question, you keep it to 2 minutes. That sounds challenging, and it is, and you need to practice to keep it to the 2 minutes. So that might be really useful. Or for example, every time you intervene, you just pick up one nugget of advice, or you pose one question and you keep it, otherwise it can become a monologue quite quickly. You can give one piece of insight and then you can pass it to the next speaker. And of course, that doesn't stop the audience or the chair or another speaker from asking you more. You know, they could go back and say, well, actually, I'd like to hear more about Mary's suggestion there. That sounds really interesting. Can we hear more? Okay, so that can be a follow-on question. For the inspiration sessions, you have longer, which is lovely, but we still are not looking for a monologue from the person being interviewed. It's much more interesting and actually easier for you as a speaker if there's some to and fro with the chair or the moderator. So to break up the monologue, the chair and you can work out probing questions. So you can generally have an idea of your key message or key messages and what you want to include there. But instead of you just doing a 25-minute presentation, which is a totally different session, what would be ideal is for the chair to ask questions so that you can pull in those different elements that you want to cover. And that helps keep it lively and varied. Remember, it's not a lecture. We're asking you to have some sort of conversation or a narrative. Okay, and even if this conversation is prepared, as in you both agree what the questions are and what points you want to cover, it's not going to feel scripted by the audience if you're genuinely there answering the questions. Every time I present differently because I'm not using a script, for example, but I have my talking points, and you probably see me looking at them from time to time. The other really important thing is that you need to be complementary in your session. As I said already, for the audience, they are looking at 4, 5, 6 different people on the stage. And so the more you can think as a whole, as part of a team, the better the experience will be for the audience and the stronger the message will be. So you need to work harmoniously together. This is where I really want to stress the importance of these planning meetings. Now, the Secretariat is helping you organise the first one, but you may want to have a follow-up one closer to the time of the event. This is really an opportunity to think critically about your session. Who is speaking on what? What's their angle, their argument? What's their speciality? What makes most sense for the order of the speakers? Maybe you have a broader view, so you'd be a great introductory speaker, and then you could explore the different speakers if they have different angles. And it's your opportunity to discuss with the chair, and they know that, they're waiting for that, the chairs as well, and we have sessions with them next week. Remember, as I've already said, to prepare those interaction pieces, so the polls or the questions or even the activities. You know, even though you can't see the speakers, maybe you want them to try a different exercise, a different stretch or something like that. You could definitely do that. And it would work for the live and the recorded once it's on demand as well. So you can ask the audience to do something, and each of the speakers could do the same activity on the stage. That would be a great one. I just thought of that. How do you want to leave your presentation? You know, maybe you want that sound bite to finish your intervention with that soundbite. Or maybe you want to lead into the next speaker with a question. So maybe you want to sort of pass the baton down through the speakers, for example. As I said, if you've got differing opinions, maybe that's really nice balance to have. So the pro and the con, and then you would open up to the other speakers who could sort of debate that. The other thing you should really work out, again, it comes down to the rules, is how do you intervene if you want to? If you've got something to add, how's the chair going to know that? You know, when we're sitting on the stage together, you can sort of do a little bit of a shuffle or or a wink, and the chair's usually able to pick up on that and then pass to you. In the virtual world, it's much harder to do that. So you need to work out how you're going to do that. Okay, so a very simple way would just be to raise your hand, and you need to make sure it's within the frame and maybe keep it up. That might work. What happens if you speak too long? How do you want to be told that? Or maybe you don't want to. Hopefully you do. Sometimes you see people hold up a red card. I don't have a red card here, but for example, I have my orange book, and that sign could be, please wrap up your intervention now. It's time to move on. I don't know. It's not very subtle, but you do need to work out ways because otherwise, if there's no agreement between you, it could really be a rambling and not very controlled session. And for the audience, that's not a great experience. And for you, you won't get across your message as clearly. The other thing is we really highly recommend that you attend the technical rehearsals. So these are practices with the actual platform before the Congress itself. And you've been invited to these already, I believe. During these sessions, you'll find out more about the Q&A function and other technical functionality. So it's really important. The more comfortable you are with this technology, the easier you will be there, present, and able to focus on what you're saying rather than where do I click or is my thing set up correctly. Okay, now with the live Q&A, with the live sessions, there is always an element of Q&A, of questions and answers within the session. It can be between the panel, but also with the audience. So one thing about preparing for this, it can be nerve-wracking if you don't know what questions you're going to get, but you can know in advance what kind of questions you will get. So I recommend that you prepare questions and answers. So let's start doing that now. Write down what question you would love to be asked. You really hope that you get asked so you can come out with that gem of advice or even soundbite. What question do you really want to be asked? And then what question do you hate getting asked? Maybe there's one that comes up regularly. What is that? Write it down. Take a couple of seconds to think about that. One question that you absolutely would love to be asked, and another that you really don't want to be asked. Now, following this training, I suggest that you brainstorm all of the questions that you could get asked. They'll help you prepare. Yes, it sounds like a lot of work, but it will really make you feel more reassured and ready for this live session. And you'll be a much better panelist because of it. And then what you can do when you have your long list of questions, good and bad, is to group them per topic. And that helps because then you see that there are specific themes or areas. And when you get a question maybe that's not on your list, chances are it would fit into one of those topics. So you know more or less the area that you need to respond. So you have the questions. You should also obviously have answers. Very simple, again, one-line answer of how you would answer this question, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Take the time. It is worth it. It's not just for this Congress. You'll probably find yourself using these again. as a group in your planning meeting, you might also have common questions, and you might need to think about who is best to answer a specific question. There might be someone who's better asked, and so the chair should know that on this specific question, if it's asked, or for him or her to actually pose that question to that person, or maybe there are 2 or 3 of you, for example, the opposing points of view. And then what you can do is practice answering these questions. So you can ask a colleague, a friend, a family member to pose the questions to you, and you do a quick fire, just your concise sentence answer. And there you get your brain firing, and you'll be more and more prepared for that live session and really on point. There is also a great technique that I use, and it's often in preparing for recruitment, so competency-based questions. And basically it's a technique that helps to frame answers. This might be useful to you, so I'm going to share it with you very briefly. It is called the STAR technique. Maybe you've heard of it. Sometimes it's called the CAR technique, but I prefer the STAR. The STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, Results, STAR. And what I find great about this is it really helps you to make sure that you're including all the elements you need to for the audience to understand your answer or your story or your intervention in general. And it keeps you quite focused, but make sure that you get into enough detail. So how does that work? Situation. The situation is where you describe the context, the characters, when, where, and what situation. Okay, what background information do you need to provide? So maybe you say, well, 10 years ago, I was working in, I don't know, Uganda in a physio clinic, and So we see where you are, when it was, who was there, etc. Task. This is where you describe the challenge that you were facing. What did you need to do? So I regularly saw some young children who, I don't know, I don't have all the technical words in physio, but were walking something, blah, blah, I don't know. So what was the challenge? What's the task that you had to address? Or maybe it was a specific patient or something like that. Then action, what you did, the actions or steps you took, the tools you used, the exercises you introduced, etc., that helped you directly to address that task or that challenge. Okay, so the action, so what was your recommended exercises or regime or whatever it is, and how you then showed them that and followed them up, etc. Okay, so that's really what you did. And that's a really important part. And then finally, which is something that a lot of people forget, is the results. Okay, the so what. What happened as a result of the action that you took? Did it work well? Not well? What did you learn? Maybe it's opened a whole new way of working for you. What was successful? What was not successful? So that sort of wraps it up into a nice package. So as I said, you should practice answering your questions, and some of them you might want to use the STAR technique to make sure that you include all the elements that you need to, but keep focused on the message that you want as well. But of course, with questions and live interactions, there could be some problems coming up, some challenging situations. For example, what if you just don't know the answer to a question? So in the chat, have you ever had this situation and how did you deal with it? Have you ever been asked a question that you don't know the answer to? Or maybe you've seen someone else. How did they handle it? If they handled it well, we'd love to hear. If I ask you a question now, you don't know the answer, how will you deal with it? I just said that I do not know. Great, Claudia. Remember to change to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your answers there. Laura, yes, I was honest and said so and put it to the audience. Great. So one thing is, yes, being honest for sure, but rather than just saying, yeah, I don't know, finished, you open out to the audience. You ask another speaker. You say, or maybe we could, I know Dr. So-and-so would be the great person for you to talk to. So a couple of steps there. First is to be honest. Say, yes, I don't know. That's fine. You don't have to know everything about everything. You're the expert in your area specifically. You don't have to be the expert in everything. So being honest is great. And then, exactly as Claudia says, present a possible solution. So you can pass to another panelist if you think they have an answer or could help further. You could open it to the audience further. You could suggest someone that they could go to or a resource where they can find the answer. Great, Hannah, you've brought up a great point as well. Repeat the question to make sure you understand the question. So when you write in the chat, remember to change to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you're writing in the chat. So Hannah said, a great suggestion is to repeat the question to make sure that you understand it. And that's great because it makes sure that you understand it for sure. It gives you a couple of seconds to get your brain working and your answer ready. And also gives you the opportunity to reframe or rephrase that question in a way that's going to be easier for you to address. So a couple of good tips there. One thing that could also come up is that you're hit with a question and you're really not ready for the answer, even though you know you've got it within you. Here, don't be afraid of just saying to the chair or whoever's asked the question, I need a little bit more time. Can you go to another speaker and come back to me afterwards? That's totally fine as well. So don't be shy of, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be there right on the spot. If you need to give yourself more time, do that. You're only human after all. Does anyone have any questions on this piece that I've covered? So I've covered quite a lot of things. We've talked about how to speak virtually, the ideas around preparing as a team for the audience interactions, how to be complimentary, knowing who you're speaking to, using the planning meeting well, how to prepare for the questions, how to frame your answers in the STAR framework as an idea. Has anyone got any questions or concerns or maybe another suggestion, something I've missed out that you'd like to share that you've found that's worked well for you? Give you a couple of seconds. I don't know how quick you are at typing. And of course, we can always address things at the end. As Birgit said, we're available to stay online a little bit past the hour to make sure that all of your questions are answered so that you walk away feeling confident and ready to prepare for your session. When the audience does not have questions. Okay, Claudia is asking, yeah, what happens when the audience does not have questions? Well, I would recommend that you prepare for that exact eventuality. You don't know how many people will be there. You don't know how many questions will come. And so instead of having the awkward silence, you can prepare questions for yourselves. Okay, so the chair could pose it, or maybe you have a question for another panelist. So just prepare for that eventuality. Anyway, it's not wasted time because it's probably the same sort of question you'll get from the audience if they do have questions. So that's what you can do. Prepare questions for yourselves to keep that engaging, interesting session. Okay, now we've talked a lot about the virtual setup. I wanted to give you some tips on how to set yourself up. It is worth doing, not leaving to the last minute. You really want to set yourself up in the best possible light, no pun intended. And these are things you can control. So it's worth thinking about them in advance so that you have time to make sure you have the optimum virtual setup. Now you are a TV presenter. And so you want to present yourself as well as you can within that environment. How do you do that? Firstly, camera. So most of you are probably working on a laptop, and the laptop camera, a modern laptop camera, is probably good enough. But check that the quality is as good as it can be, or you may want to borrow a camera. There are actually quite cheap cameras available now, which increase the quality quite a lot. But chances are you probably have someone around you, friends, family, colleagues, who have a better quality camera that you could borrow for your session. The other thing about your camera is how to set it up. So there are two things to remember. One is the height, and the second one is the angle. So in terms of height, what you're looking for is the camera to be at eye level, okay, which mine is eye level. But you can be at eye level, but at the wrong angle. I'm sure you have all seen speakers like this, and we see nicely up the nose, okay? Or maybe you have someone hiding on the corner like this. So this is unfortunate, I find. So we really want to get the angle to be straight on to your eyes. And the other thing about the camera is this is your eye contact. And it feels a little bit strange if you're not used to it, but by looking into the lens, the audience feels like you are speaking directly to them. And I've been trying to do this as much as I can during the session. If I was reading my notes all the time, sure, I'd have the same content and I could even be really enthusiastic and all, but I don't know about you, but it feels funny. I don't feel like I'm being spoken to. And that is more likely for me to turn off and go do something else. Whereas if I'm speaking into the camera to you, that really does make a difference. Now, it does take practice. You may want to put a picture or a soft toy behind your camera to remind you, or a big arrow to remind you to do that. And yes, you can have your notes on your screen or even in a book. It's not a problem if you need to look at your notes as you're answering the questions and things. But the default should always be to go back to the camera lens, which is the eye contact. I see Laura needs to hop off. Thanks, Laura. Make sure that you watch the end of the session in the recorded version. Great having you here. Yes, I realize it's we're reaching the end of the hour. So hopefully you can stay on for a few minutes longer. The next thing with the technical setup is the lighting. If I had lighting, no matter how good my quality, my camera is, it would not be the same. I'm just trying to find turn off my camera, turn off my lights. So what you see, yes, you can see me. It's not as good as when I have my lights on. I've got two lights here. One is a simple bedside lamp, and the other one is a ring light. Because I do this quite a lot, it was worth me investing in. You don't need to do that. What you need to do with lighting is make sure you are well lit from behind the camera. If you put yourself with light behind you, you create a silhouette and people just can't see your facial expressions, which is a real pity. So if you need to maybe rearrange things and get more lights involved in your setup, do that. The other thing is, of course, sound. If we can't hear you, that's not going to be great either. So again, the laptop setup might be okay, but you have to be very careful of background noise. So it might be worth you plugging in a headset, especially if you have background noise, and wearing that during the live session. Or you could also see if someone around you has a more advanced microphone. But again, it's not necessary, but if you have the opportunity, it can make a huge difference in terms of the sound quality. Now, the next thing is to think about the background. So what we're looking for here is a neutral background, not too much clutter, not too confusing. Some people like to use virtual backgrounds, but these can be very dangerous, especially in a live setting, because I'm sure you've seen this, people disappearing into the fog of their background, or suddenly a giant hand popping out from nowhere. So ideally, find a space within your office or your home where you have quite a neutral, simple background, which is a better backdrop for you than you having to use the virtual background. Now, in terms of your setup, you may also want to stand during your session. You can stand, you can sit, it doesn't matter, it is up to you, but it's worth, again, thinking about it. So if you're standing, for example, I can't stand in this particular space. If I do a presentation where I want to stand, I go and I actually put my computer on top of a chair, on top of my kitchen table, because that gives me much more space and the right height, etc., for me to, for example, if I'm training on body language and things like that, or the use of the stage. But for this space, I can't. It just doesn't work. I've got funny ceilings, etc. But you might be able to find a space which works for you. And if you feel good standing and you see that energy is better and you like to use your hands, do that. Just be careful wherever you're setting yourself up that you are within the frame. As I said, you're like on TV now. So ideally you're filling a good part of the frame. You're not cutting off, your head, or you're not leaving too much space above you, and that your hands, if you like to use them, can be seen all the time, rather than, there's nothing worse than suddenly a hand coming out of nowhere. So think about that. Take the time to frame yourself. What should you wear? Well, you need to feel comfortable. If you don't want to wear a suit and tie, don't wear a suit and tie. You can wear traditional costume if you want. You should feel comfortable. You should look professional, and feel comfortable, exactly as I said, and the authentic you. One thing I would say is be careful of patterns in what you're wearing. They can cause distractions in the video, distortions. So bold, plain colors work better on camera. So I'd like you to take a few minutes to think about what you need to do to improve your setup. What needs to change? Make a note of it so you don't forget. Do you need to find a different place from where you're currently sitting for the event? Do you need to borrow a better camera or microphone? Do you need to get your bedside lamp involved in your setup? Have you scheduled time in your diary to practice speaking on camera? Practice your beautiful sound bites, answering the questions, looking at the camera. Do you need to ask for help from a friend or colleague? And they might need to wear a mask and keep distance, if depending on your situation in the world. But it's worth thinking about this now. Maybe you actually just want to jump on a call with a colleague and check out different setup options, and you can get their feedback. The other thing with the setup is you need to practice. It's not the same as speaking on a stage and sitting in a comfy sofa next to the other panelists. You'll need to remember to keep your energy up, to sit on the edge of your seat if you're speaking, to keep the energy, to look at the camera, and to be able to be on point with your messaging. Practice, take the time to do that. Does anyone have any questions? Esther Marie, I was advised to avoid white in dress regarding light contrast. Have you come across that? Yes, as I said, I think bold colors are better, especially if you have a white background, and especially because it can play havoc with if you've got too much lighting, and then you sort of this bright white. It's almost a glow. You almost glow into the camera, and that's really distracting. So a little bit of white's probably fine, but a bright white and a white background is probably too much, and it's better to have a bold color. Basic, or even a muted color if you don't want a bold color. Like this is quite muted, it's a sort of purpley gray. I think it looks okay on the camera, something like that. So yeah, I have heard about, and definitely when you record a video, they say to avoid white, especially white on white, especially if you've got lots of light. Thanks, Esther Marie. Any other questions about setup? The important point is to spend the time to think about it and ask around if you need help. And of course, the Secretariat's happy to help as well if you need further guidance on that. Great. So the final thing that we've been leading to is lights, camera, action. So during those few days in April, you will be asked to get online in advance of your session. I think it's half an hour, 45 minutes before. There, the technical team will make sure that your setup is good and that we can hear you and we can see you, etc. But you need to practice as I said, speaking to the camera. It is eye contact. It will take some practice. So over the next month, if you have any Zoom calls or team calls, just practice doing that, and it will help become a habit, and you'll be more natural, and you will worry about it less when you get to your session. Remember that even when you're not speaking, the audience can see you, and this is an important one. Sometimes I've seen live sessions, and someone is on stage, so it means their camera's on, they are a panelist, and they finish there, yes, I said something really important and now I'm done. And they stop, and it's terrible. Or they start, playing with their hair, or they're busy writing an email. This can really destroy your credibility, and it's a real pity. Think of yourself as sitting on the stage with your fellow panelists. Sit there with a nice neutral, not frowning face, but nice neutral face. You can smile and nod, look at the camera, listen to what they're saying. It's going to make you look so much more professional and engaged, and it's much more likely for the audience to stay around and listen really carefully to your messages. So it's a little tip. I'm sure none of you would have ever done that, but I just wanted to mention it just to remember you're always on camera, so make sure you're there. Now, the final thing I wanted to talk about was your voice. Okay, I have a little activity that I'd like you to try. I know we've lost a few people, which is a real pity, but for those who can stick around for another 5 minutes, I would like you to think about your voice. It's really important to keep the interest and the engagement with the audience, and your voice can do that very much so. If you speak like this all the time, even if your message is really important, it's actually really difficult for most people to listen to you. I think you'll agree. So what you can do is vary your pace, your volume, your pitch, and to use pauses. Now, we don't have so much time, so I'm going to do this quickly, but I have a sentence: move it or lose it. Now, we can't hear you, we can't see you, it's a real pity, but take a deep breath, and I want you to say with conviction, move it or lose it. Try that now. Move it or lose it. It's probably not how you would usually say that. I want it more than what you would usually say. Move it or lose it. This is life and death situation. So what you're doing there is using more volume, and you're possibly bringing your voice pitch down a little bit lower, sort of a grunty voice. Now I'd like you to try the same sentence, excited. Okay, move it or lose it. That's so American. I feel like I should have jazz hands and all. Move it or lose it. You might feel funny doing this, but I'm just trying to get you to start exploring your voice a little bit. What do you do here to make it sound excited? You speak quicker and probably at a higher pitch. The next one the final one is suspense. So how do we do suspense? Well, it's with the big pause. So you want to have a big pause before the second part. You want to say, move it or lose it. Okay, again, this is so exaggerated. It's just a fun activity to help you explore different ways of saying things. So try that. Move it or lose it. It can really change the whole message compared to move it or lose it, or move it or lose it. It really changes the impression that the audience gets. Now, this is just a fun activity to show you that you can do more with your voice than you probably do naturally. And so I challenge you over the next month to see what you can do with your voice, to see if when you say, thank you so much for the opportunity, you actually sound like you are thankful. Okay, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today. It doesn't sound like you're thankful. It doesn't sound like you're happy to be there. So it's being cohesive with what you're saying and the message you're trying to get across with the way that you use your voice. Are there any questions on speaking? Lights, camera, action. I'm glad you like it, Claudia. So before I hand back to Birgit, I want you to commit to one thing that you'll do differently for this presentation, this session. Maybe it's something you'll stop doing. Maybe it's something you will try. Or maybe there's just something else you've got one big takeaway. Tell me what you've learned today. What are you going to take forward? Specific. It's lovely that you've all enjoyed it. Please tell me what you're going to do differently. We need to commit to this. How are you going to prepare? Voice. Magda's going to focus on her voice. Great. I look forward to hearing it. Is it preparing for the Q&A? Is it thinking more about the audience? STAR. Great. I love that you love that. Situation, task, action, results. And actually this can go way beyond the session. It can be helpful when you speak to patients or your boss, etc. It's a really nice framework to use. Does anyone need to do some extra setup work? Gwen, lighting and looking at the camera. Yes. Great, Gwen. Eye contact. Prepare setting and think about the voice. Thanks, Lisa. Susan, how to use polls. Yes, and do that with your panel together. Tips for spontaneity. Great. Prepare with other speakers. Yes, attend your preparation sessions, please, your planning meetings. Who to answer, what questions, use of body. Yeah, we haven't even talked about body language, but these are all things we need to make sure we include within our frame. Great. It looks like you've all taken something away. I'm really happy to hear that. And I can hand it to Birgit. We're now going to, I think, run a poll and see if we've increased confidence.
Yes, thank you, Helen. So I think there was so much information for us to digest, to take on in preparation for the sessions. Just one piece of information before going back to the key dates is some of the discussion sessions have already had their initial planning meeting. The others are coming up. And for those of you involved in the inspiration sessions, I will reach out to you this week to set this up. So no worries, this is in the plan and we'll do this over the coming weeks. So as I said, just some key dates. You will have received your program notice earlier this week. So this means you now know at what time and date your session is taking place. And then also in the next couple of days, the platform will be live. So you will be able to have a look at the platform. The technical rehearsals that Helen has mentioned are scheduled for the second half of March. And you should all have received an invite for these. So if this slot is not convenient, let us know and we will reschedule your session. 26th of March, we will need all the poll questions, which is also an important date. And then obviously the live content will be, the live event will be 9th till 11th of April, and then everything will be available on demand until the 8th of July. I know that some of you have had to leave, but I think it's still worth going back to the original query that we had for you. And my colleague Rachel will ask you the question again now after this session with Helen on how confident you feel. And now after having attended this session. So now we didn't have any very confident participants when we started. And so the share of confident and very confident has really increased, and there's no more terrified. So I hope that the person who mentioned this before hasn't left, but is now in one of these three categories. So it's great to see that you feel more confident in preparing for Congress and for your live session. So I would really like to say thank you, Helen, so much for your input. It was really inspiring, and I'm so excited about the discussion sessions and the inspiration sessions that are live, and I think will be such an important element of Congress, where there's a lot of science, and some of the posters and platform presentations will be very, very heavy loaded. And I think these sessions are really the lighter ones. And we know that they are very popular with delegates. So again, the recording will be uploaded if you want to get back to it. And we look forward to having you as speakers on Congress. And I must say, I'm really excited about this event and looking forward to it. So thanks, Helen, for helping us with preparations. Bye-bye.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye.